Big Ten projected offensive line total career snaps for the entire five-man offensive line. Northwestern far and away above everybody else. One of the reasons why they are far and away above everybody else is they have a transfer from South Dakota State, I believe it was, Evan Bierston. He is like in his fifth or sixth year, and he's been starting for a long time now. Xavier Gray is actually in his sixth year right now. He started playing college football in 2019, so he has over 2,000 snaps. Jack Bailey has over 2,000 snaps, and then their star offensive lineman from last year, Caleb Turnen, he has over 2,000 snaps. Their lowest snap count offensive lineman is Azamo Oriotaka. I apologize if I'm saying that wrong. He is most likely going to start in a redshirt freshman, so he has only about 150 snaps on the year. From there, you have Illinois. They have a lot. Oregon comes in with a lot of snaps as well, so that's a big one. And then from there, it goes Rutgers, Nebraska, Indiana, Minnesota, Penn State, Wisconsin, Ohio State, USC, Iowa, Michigan State, UCLA, Maryland, and then your bottom three are Washington, Michigan, and Jeff. I think most people could guess this one, Purdue. So this was really interesting information to me. I don't think it's going to exactly pertain to this is the best offensive line because obviously talent comes into play as well. But so much of offensive line play is development, getting onto the field, working together amongst each other as a group. What are some of your big takeaways from seeing these kind of stats here, Jeff?
So this is the first time I've seen it. My thought is any team in the 4,000 through 5,000, 5,500 range, you probably got three starters back, would be my guess, right? Because I know I'm familiar with Ohio State. They probably got three starters back. That's pretty good, right? I mean, Penn State with high aspirations, it'd be great to be more. And once you see over that 7,000, you're talking four starters there. And then Northwestern. The other problem with me saying starters, JR, with transfer portal, you got people who are virtual starters, right? They started many times somewhere else. They're coming to your program and they're super experiences. You could kind of call them a returning starter. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, but offensive line stability is a huge thing. It almost derailed Ohio State's season, quite frankly. I mean, I kind of laugh. People think, what happened against Michigan? It just drives me crazy when people don't forget that it was just before the Indiana game the prior week that they lost Seth McLaughlin and had to rejigger their line all over again. Against Indiana, they weren't very good offensively. Going into the Michigan game, Ohio State coaches didn't have a lot of confidence in their offensive line, and the game plan reflected it. And then Will Howard had a bad game, and that's how you end up. And then Michigan has a great line. So, but my point is going back to this is that, a stable offensive line is just huge. We saw it in the Super Bowl, right? I mean, the Chiefs were in the Super Bowl because they won one score game because their defense was awesome and their defensive coordinator did an awesome job. They're kind of holding their offense together with band-aids a little bit, especially on the offensive line. Once they faced a great defensive line similar to Ohio State when they faced Michigan, the Chiefs looked like a bunch of like, what's going on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so kind of going on here, JR, but offensive line stability and experience next to quarterback is the only position that is more important as far as amount of experience than offensive line is the bottom line. So
Yeah, totally agree. And some of these offensive lines have been together more often, like Illinois. That offensive line has been together pretty much, for multiple seasons now. I think only their right guard has been kind of in and out, and he's not even a transfer. So Brandon Henderson, I think that's who it is. That's at least that's the information I got. I was actually surprised with Oregon and their offensive line with their returning snaps. Now they brought in transfers, so that helps. Isaiah World's been starting for a good amount of time for Nevada. Alex Harkey, their right tackle, he started only 1 year for Texas State. So outside of him, you had Poncho, Emmanuel Pregnon. He comes in from USC. He's got a good lot of starting experience, over 2,000 snaps experience, over 2,000 snaps in his career. So Indiana as well, they're one that's up there. Zen Mikulski really brought their numbers down because he's only had, pretty much the snaps from Ohio State this year in that Nebraska game. Outside of that, he's not really played all that much, but they do have a lot in Cahill Benson. Pat Coogan has over 1,500 snaps. Carter Smith has over 1,500 snaps. So really, really interesting to look at this information. It kind of justifies what I've been saying about Michigan, especially in the transfer portal, that I expected more experience out of the transfer portal for Michigan. Right now, it looks like your tackles for Michigan are going to be a sophomore and a freshman. Evan Link and what's the other guy's name? Andrew Sprague. Now they're redshirted, so that does make a little bit of a difference. But at the same time, like they only have one offensive lineman who has over 1,000 snaps in his career, and that's Giovanni Elhadi. I mean, if I'm Michigan, I got freshman quarterback Bryce Underwood coming in. I would have made it a huge priority to go out and get experienced offensive linemen in the portal, especially with the type of money that I have. But obviously, they didn't do that. Sharon Moore believes, I guess, in his guys to be able to train and develop. We'll see how it goes. But for me, it was surprising to see Michigan that far down there, especially knowing they have a true freshman quarterback coming in who is most likely, if not he's going to start at the beginning of the year, he's probably going to start at some point this year.
Yeah, and given how the key to their national championship is how they replenish their offensive line with great transfers. I mean, they nailed their transfers going a couple years back when they won the Natty. On the flip side, they are doing a good job of bringing in really good recruiting to that defensive front, right? Maybe not transfers, but recruiting to it. But that is a concern for sure when you see them kind of lower on the list there in the Big Ten and them wanting to bounce back. You know, they still won 8-5 overall, right? A lot of great momentum for sure.
Right.
But
And Greg Crippen is coming back. He was, he didn't start all of last year. I think he was probably the better center between the two that they had there. Evan Link did do better as the season went on. That Texas game kind of gave him a bad rap because he allowed a number of pressures in that one, but he got better as the year went on. So, I mean, it's just a really important offseason for Michigan's offensive line development this year because like I said, they just don't have a whole lot of guys who have played a ton of snaps in college football. That doesn't mean they can't be good, right? Like snaps aren't everything, but it is definitely something to watch, especially with a team that relies so much on the run and is going to most likely have a true freshman quarterback at some point starting this year. Any other teams on this list that kind of stuck out to you, Jeff? I mean, were there any teams that that maybe based on this data that you think will maybe have a top 5 offensive line or maybe a bottom 5 offensive line next year?
No, other than what you hit on, I mean, one of the biggest questions, Illinois, they're in the top 15 in the all too early top 25s a lot. Some people have them in the top 10. It's going to steal a little thunder. They have 18 returning starters. That was one of my notes and everything. So it only makes sense. They've got probably 4 returning offensive line starters based on that statistic there. That's big because that's backed by a quarterback going into their third year, Altmaier. So, Illinois could be a team. I heard some people say Illinois this year could be the Indiana. It's a bad analogy. Indiana came from nowhere. Illinois is not coming from nowhere. But could it be another non-blue blood making the playoffs? In that regard, yeah, they're Indiana-like, right? But in Oregon, too. So that's really interesting news because they're going to likely have a first-year starter, right? Isn't Dante Moore, I have down as the most likely starter there. He's got experience, just not a lot of playing experience, but he's been in a couple different systems. So it's not like you're bringing in, he's like a third-year guy, right? Even though, and he did get some playing time
started
at UCLA.
Most of the year. Yeah, started most of the year under Chip Kelly, but I think he got some injuries here and there that kind of limited his time. But he did play a good amount as a freshman.
Yeah. So that stands out. And then Nebraska and Raiola, looking to take the big step in year two. Often you'll see that the second year in starting for a quarterback is huge. The first year you could take a 5-star and they're still going to be up and down, right? That for I don't care how talented they are. Trevor Lawrence is probably the only guy that just nailed it like his freshman year, his first year. Everyone else, but having that stability of a strong offensive line. I mean, you saw in the Super Bowl, as great as Patrick Mahomes was, his footwork was horrible. He was like, didn't trust things. He was moving up in the pocket when he should have been doing something else. I mean, if you don't have that stable offensive line, things just go south.
Yeah, Dylan Raiola can dress like Patrick Mahomes, but don't move in the pocket like Patrick Mahomes was in the Super Bowl. Okay, don't do that, Dylan
Yeah.
Raiola. Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. I do think Penn State, they're bringing a number of guys back. Their snaps are a little misleading because they did have like Nolan Rusi. He started about halfway through last year, so he doesn't have as many snaps, but he was a part of that offensive line that got them their run. Drew Shelton is coming back. He's probably going to be their left tackle. That's huge for them to have a reliable left tackle who has over 1,500 snaps in his career, and then the guard. I'm terrible at pronouncing his name, but Alavega. Iane, I don't know how to pronounce it. I apologize, but he's going to be a really good guard for them. He was good for them last year and should be again. So, and then Minnesota did a good job of going out and get some good transfer offensive linemen. So, really, really good stuff there.